يعنى الإنجليز بالشأن العام الاقتصادي والسياسي إن كان داخل بلادهم أو خارجها، فيتظاهرون ضد الحروب والتقاتل وضد سياسات حكوماتهم التي تعنى بالشأن الداخلي أو الخارجي، كلها لمصلحة الإنسان هنا أو في أي مكان من العالم.
كما لخطاب العنصرية هنا جمهور، كذلك خطاب التسامح والدعوة للعدل يجد آذانا صاغية في بريطانيا وفي أنحاء أوروبا، وهو تيار مضاعف مرات أكثر من تيار العنصرية. جيرمي كوربن أحد الناشطين السياسيين يتمسك بالعدل ويمقت التفرقة العنصرية والحروب.
Let's start here now. Why are you here? Why this?
I'm the chair of the Stop the War Coalition, and I was there at the foundation of the coalition in 2001. And we opposed the Afghan war because we didn't believe it was going to bring any peace or good solution to the world. Obviously, what happened in 9/11 in New York was terrible, the loss of over 3,000 lives there. But the loss of tens of thousands in Afghanistan, the spending by Britain alone of £17 billion isn't going to bring about peace, isn't going to bring about justice. And indeed, it's damaged society in Britain through anti-terror legislation which damages our civil liberties, and it hasn't led to any prosperity for the Afghan people. So we're saying bring the troops home now and let the Afghan people decide their future.
Do you think it was a mistake, like sending troops by the government, or there were some interests that they did not reveal to their people?
In the case of Syria,
Afghanistan, Iraq.
Afghanistan, there are
And Iraq.
And Iraq, there are massive interests. The massive interests are a combination of the natural resources of both countries, the oil that's in Iraq, and the huge mineral reserves that remain to be exploited in Afghanistan. And there's also a big interest in military and private security companies that have made a great deal of money out of both those wars. Huge profits have been made by the support systems for the troops, and a client class has been created in both countries who work with the occupying military forces. And so there becomes an imperative of itself in that. And what we're saying here is we have resources apparently to bomb Afghanistan. We've spent £17 billion doing it.
We're doing a program about the Arab communities in London, in the UK in general. Do you think there's any racism against them?
I live in London and I represent a London constituency in Parliament, and my constituency has over 70 different languages spoken in it. There are people living in my community from every country in the world, and basically people get along pretty well. I live in an area that has a large Christian church, a fundamentalist church, has Catholic, has Church of England, also has 2 mosques nearby, also a synagogue, and there are temples. Every religion is there. People get along, they understand each other, and they work pretty well together. Other parts of Britain, less so, much less tolerant. And indeed, the whole way in which the Afghan and Iraq wars have been presented has led to an increase in racism, has led to a degree of Islamophobia, and has led to unfortunate, unfair and wrong targeting of Muslim people and Arab peoples by different authorities. And so our campaign is of course opposed to the wars, but it's also about the cohesion of our society. We live in one world. If that's to be a world of peace, we have to understand each other's faiths or no faiths. We have to understand each other's cultures, but above all understand the history that goes with it. If somebody comes to live here and they gain the right of residence or they gain asylum, then they have to accept the laws of the country they're in. If I go and live in another country, I have to accept the laws of that country because I'm chosen to live within that jurisdiction.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
on your cause.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
تفجيرات لندن الحدث الإرهابي المدان يوم تحمل تبعاته العرب عبر ردات فعل منظمة أحيانا تشي بالعنصرية والكراهية التي تظلم الجميع دون تفريق. فبحسب دراسة عدها معهد أتلانتيك فورم قبل 3 سنوات، فإن ثلث العرب في بريطانيا تعرضوا على الأقل إلى شكل من أشكال المضايقة والعنصرية المتصلة بالدين والعرق. الشيخ ياسر المصري متهم بالإرهاب في بلاده الأم في مصر، وهو لاجئ سياسي في بريطانيا اليوم، شملته نتائج تبعات تفجيرات لندن قبل أكثر من 7 سنوات.
انتقلت مرتين في بريطانيا في عام 99 4 أيام على 4 أيام أثناء التحقيق، وأخلي سبيلي على لعدم ثبوت أي أدلة. وبعد أحداث سبتمبر، بعد أحداث 11 من سبتمبر، تم توجيه 5 اتهامات. مكثت في السجن 8 أشهر، سجن بالمارش، سجن شديد الحراسة. وأيضا رأيت بنفسي أيضا واطلعت على أن الشرطة البريطانية أيضا تعمل على فبركة القضايا وتلفيق القضايا وإحضار أدلة غير صحيحة. 11 من سبتمبر يعني أنا أدنت وقتها قتل الأبرياء، لأنه أصلا لا تزر وزر. وهنا في بريطانيا موضوع الباصات وما إلى ذلك، أنا قلت في التلفزيون البريطاني لا يعني أن بلير مجرم حرب أن نعاقب الشعب البريطاني. لا يجب على الشعب البريطاني أن يتحمل مسؤولية إجرام بلير. نشأت النزعة القومية عند البعض مرتبطين بالدنمارك، بلجيكا، هولندا، اللي هو اليمين المتطرف. هؤلاء برضو مجموعات تقوم ضد التواجد لغير المسلمين في هذا البلد. يفترض أن كل إنسان بريء حتى تثبت إدانته. فالآن لا توجد هو فقط العنصرية أو الخوف من الإسلام اللي هو بيسمى الإسلاموفوبيا. هذه هي المشكلة الموجودة عند هؤلاء القوم.
That's a 17% increase on a falling turnout.
مع هبوب ريح الأزمة الاقتصادية في بريطانيا، تنامت نزعة العدائية ضد الجاليات المهاجرة ومنها الجالية العربية، فأنتجت مناخاً سياسياً جديداً بات من العادي أن تتعالى فيه أصوات متطرفة تسعى لطرد العرب خصوصاً والأجانب عموماً. ناك غريفن رئيس الحزب الوطني البريطاني أحد تلك الأصوات المتهمة بالتحريض على الكراهية والعنصرية.
What do you think of the Arab people in here?
Well, my party has a strong position against immigration, which is on a huge scale into Britain. But when most British people, and certainly our voters, and we talk about immigration, we're talking about immigration from the Indian subcontinent, from the West Indies and from Africa. Obviously within London there's a very significant Arab population, but it's not something that bothers our people. There's, I think, no perception of a competition for, say, jobs and housing between the Arabs and the indigenous British. The Arabs are there as part of the street scenery, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Now, your party is accused of really hitting people in the street, violating many rules, showing hatred to any immigrant, regardless of how important he is or she is to the place he's working in London or in the UK. Is that true?
We're accused of it. Certainly isn't true. We're frequently attacked by far left mobs which are organised by the British political elite and also by sections of the Zionist elite in Britain, and we defend ourselves if we're attacked. We never go out and attack anybody. There's no hostility from us to ordinary immigrants. We don't blame immigrants for coming to Britain in search of a better life. What we blame is our political elite for allowing so many people in that it's unfair on our people and on the settled immigrants who've been here for a long time and pay their taxes and are assimilated.
So you don't count them from the bothering foreigners in London?
Yeah, obviously we count the Arabs as immigrants, but they're not an immigrant group with whom there's a problem. They're not the only one. The Sikhs, for example, have been here since the 1960s. There's nearly 1 million Sikhs in Britain. They're now settled. Everyone gets on with them. They get on with us. They're not an issue. Really, the Arabs are pretty much in the same bracket.
Because you know what? A lot of English people, when I told them I have an interview with you, they told me you're gonna listen and hear a lot of hatred. Is that so?
Of course, it's not the case. A lot of people get their view of myself and my party from the British mass media, which is very, very anti-nationalist. As a matter of fact, it's also very often anti-Arab. No, they've got the wrong end of the stick.
Right, but immigrants come here because they need a place they have the right to live, don't you think? Any immigrants, not only the Arabs.
Every people have a right to their own homeland, and if there becomes a point at which the level of immigration is such that it's affecting the rights of the people of that country to a decent chance for themselves, for their family and so on, then the people of that country democratically have the right to stop immigration. I'm sure if you took any Arab country and said, right, we're going to drop 10 million Chinese on you tomorrow, and they've got a right to come here because the desert is encroaching on Beijing, I'm sure that all the Arabs would say, no, this is an Arab land, it should stay that way. That's how we feel about Britain.
But say the international law, Geneva law, and all those laws that look after human rights, they do preserve that right.
What the European Convention of Human Rights, which is the really important door for immigration into Britain from, say, refugees, says is that a country has a duty to take people if it's the first safe country those people can get to. And we simply do not believe that people who come from countries halfway around the world and pass through or over a dozen safe countries to get here have come here out of need. They've come here because our welfare system is extremely attractive for foreigners. It puts our people at the back of the queue, and it's wrong. And it is creating hostility to immigrants, which is especially unfair on the ones who've been here, say, 30 or 40 years, who are part of our system, who've paid their taxes into our system. Their kids go to the back of the queue as well, and they get the blame for it. It's very unfair.
Right, but many of those countries were occupied by Britain. So they just feel like you occupied us, it's time for you now to take us in.
I understand the feeling, but I don't go for this post-colonial guilt. You know, when Britain was doing that, and when Britain, for instance, was abolishing slavery, literally my ancestors were working down mines, and little children in Britain were being sent up chimneys to work and die after a few years. So the British ruling elite made a lot of money out of colonialism. Ordinary British people didn't, so we don't have any guilt to make up.
Right. Now, a lot of people will look at the UK, at that colonialism, and say, if you know what before, the Balfour Promise, and that the land of the Palestinians were given to the Jews, as you know. Do you think that was a mistake?
I think it was a terrible mistake. My party is really the only serious party in Britain which takes a principled anti-Zionist stance. Our position in the Middle East isn't our business. It is fundamentally something that should be resolved by the peoples of the Middle East. But that will only happen when the West, particularly Britain and America, stop their slavish adherence to the foreign policy, not of the whole of Israel or the Jews, but of the Likud side of the Zionist movement.
إذا كان بعض الإعلام صاحب الدور الأول في بث الكراهية أو عكسها، فللثقافة دور بارز أيضا، وخاصة فن الصورة. داني إيفنز سينمائي يؤمن بالصداقة بين الشعوب وتلاقح الثقافات.
Let me have it from an English person. You're married to a Yemeni lady.
Correct.
And you're friend with Mohammed Daraji.
Yeah.
You've done The Son of Beverly and you co-produce. How would you now describe I know it's hard to generalize, but like the Arab character. Can you describe it for another English fellow now?
Okay, the biggest thing I can describe about Arabs as a whole is their, I think, closeness. For me, that's the biggest thing I've learned about the Arabic culture, both in Iraq and both with my new wife and the Yemeni community. You know, they both have different, different sort of traditions and different ways of doing things. You know, when you look in detail, and that's something that's missing from English culture. You know, it's important to say that. Like, my family back in Leeds, I'm close to my mum, my dad, and my one brother. That's it. My rest of my family are very, we don't speak that often. My wife's family, everyone gets together on a Saturday afternoon and we all have dinner together.
Yeah,
there's like 30 people.
Yeah, you just want to get rid of everyone.
Yeah, and that for me is something that's really nice, is the closeness, and everyone kind of, is, the big families, but and big communities, but they're very close and very strong together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.